Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be going through the basics of crumb coating a cake. So starting with the tools you'll need, an offset spatula and a scraper of some kind, and then a piping bag if you're going to be filling the cake. You don't need the piping bag if you're not filling the cake. So first step is to put a little dollop of icing on your cake board and then place your first layer of cake. I like using cake boards. Makes it a lot easier for smoothing the icing versus if you were to put it on a plate or something. It doesn't need to be a cake board necessarily, but just something that's flat with no extra lips or ridges. And then you take a dollop of your buttercream and spread it out over the first layer. I generally keep this layer fairly thin when I'm using a filling because I don't want there to be too much filling to cake ratio. So just spread the buttercream out in a thin layer on top of that. And another trick that you might have seen me do at the start of the video is I take a damp paper towel and place it under my cake board so it doesn't slide around when I'm pushing the buttercream around. Now you take your frosting in a piping bag. I like to use a star tip and pipe a dam around the outside edge of your cake. Usually I do 2 layers just to make sure it's locked and secure if I'm using a runnier filling. In this case, it was salted caramel. So I did 2 layers just to make sure none of it seeped out because that'll make the cake unstable. But if I was doing something like a fruit, maybe a solid pieces of chocolate, then I would only do 1 layer just because those aren't likely to seep out the side. So I just spoon the filling in and then I smooth it out a little bit just to make sure it's nice and even before I add the next cake layer. I put a lot of caramel in this one because they wanted caramel sauce, but plain vanilla icing. So I wanted to make sure that the caramel flavor was coming through. My caramel recipe that I use is Sally's Baking Addiction Homemade Salted Caramel. It is the bomb. It's the first caramel recipe that I had that works flawlessly for me, and I can actually make every time without issue. So highly recommend her recipe. I can put a link to it in the comment thingy, the caption below. We're honestly almost done. This is only a 2-layer cake. I love doing 3 layers, but 2-layer is the most common cake that gets ordered, especially right now because of COVID. People are opting for smaller designs. So then just grab your second layer. I like to put the top layer on upside down just to make sure it has a nice flat top, even though my cake layers bake flat. See my other video on ensuring flat layers. And then you just put it on. I like to press it down to get all of the air out. That way you won't get the bulge on the side as it settles in the fridge. So press down that top cake layer before you add your final coat of frosting. And then this is called the Crumb Coat. It's critical for getting a smooth finish on the cake. And essentially it's just a really thin layer of buttercream that holds in the crumbs of the cake. People call it Crumb Coat, some people call it dirty icing. But it's a critical step in cake decorating, just smoothing a thin layer all around the cake. And you can see me pushing a lot of excess off the top there because I want this layer to be thin. That way, when I put on the final coat, I know exactly how much frosting is on the cake. So I'm just using the offset spatula to make sure that all of the cake is covered in buttercream before I come in with the smooth bench scraper. I like to use metal bench scrapers, as I mentioned in my other video on getting a smooth buttercream finish, just because you can heat them up and that gives you a glossy shine to your buttercream when you go over it with the final coat. So here I go with the bench scraper, and you'll notice that I've put a lot of frosting near the top of the cake, and that's so I can get the crown of frosting just at the top corner there that you can then push down to get sharp corners, which honestly aren't as important for the crumb coat. But it does look nice, and it just keeps a good consistent thinness or thickness of frosting throughout the cake. So again, making sure that each bite is even. Lastly, I smooth out the top and then put it in the fridge to set. Typically, I like to let them set for at least an hour just so the cake settles and the fillings harden to prevent any messes up or slippages. If you guys try these tips, let me know how it goes. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and happy baking!